Have you ever felt a deep unease, a nagging sense that something monumental is about to shift in the world? A feeling that goes beyond the daily news cycle? A premonition etched in your soul? Jesus Christ warned us, my friend, and his words found throughout the Bible paint a picture far more unsettling than any headline. He spoke of a time when a global alliance, a convergence of power unlike anything seen before, would herald a spiritual darkness. This isn't just another prophecy, it's a wake-up call, a clarion bell ringing in the ears of those with faith. Are you ready to hear what the Bible reveals about the looming union of the UN with 5 specific nations? A union that could seal the spiritual fate of billions. This is not just a theory, it is a prophecy unfolding before our very eyes, rooted in the very words of God, in the sacred text of the Bible. Today, with unwavering faith in God, and guided by the wisdom found in the Bible, we will delve into a forgotten prophecy of Jesus Christ, one that speaks of an alliance between the United Nations and 5 powerful nations. This alliance, as revealed in Scripture, isn't just a political event, it's a pivotal moment in the unfolding of God's plan, a spiritual sealing that will redefine our world. Remember, friend, the Bible is not just a historical document, it is a living word from God, offering guidance and insight to those with the faith to seek it. The forgotten prophecy speaks of a time when the UN, that seemingly neutral global body, will forge a pact with 5 specific nations. These are not random nations, chosen arbitrarily. They are key players on the world stage, nations whose influence extends far beyond their borders. This alliance, this pact, will be presented as a solution, a path to peace and security. But appearances can be deceiving. Remember the words of Jesus Christ. Watch out that no one deceives you. Matthew chapter 24, verse 4. This peace and security will be a deceptive facade, masking a profound spiritual shift. We find clues in the book of Daniel, a book brimming with prophecies that illuminate our times. Daniel's vision of the abomination of desolation. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27, Daniel chapter 11 verse 31, Daniel chapter 12 verse 11, often misinterpreted, points toward a political alliance that masks its true intent. This alliance, my friend, will be the very epitome of the abomination of desolation. A system that will attempt to usurp the place of God in the hearts and minds of men. It will present itself as a force for good, for unity, but its true nature is far more sinister. It represents a profound spiritual betrayal, a turning away from God's grace and towards a false sense of security offered by human power. The Bible and Jesus Christ warn us to be vigilant, to discern truth from falsehood. Consider the implications. A global pact, mediated by the UN, involving Israel and its neighbors. A pact that seemingly brings security, stability, and prosperity, but at what cost? This is where the concept of a spiritual sealing comes into play. It's a subtle exchange, the relinquishing of spiritual freedom in exchange for immediate, tangible security. This pact, this alliance, will be seductive, offering the allure of peace in exchange for faith. Will humanity choose the illusion of security over the enduring truth of God's love, as revealed in the Bible and through Jesus Christ? This choice, my friend, is at the heart of this forgotten prophecy. It's a choice between eternal life and the fleeting comforts of this world. The Scriptures and Jesus Christ are clear. There is a cost to following the world, the cost of turning from the path of faith and God. As we delve deeper, we'll examine Daniel's vision of the 10 kings, Daniel chapter 7 verse 24, and how 5 prominent nations, the United States, China, Russia, the European Union, and Israel, stand out as potential players in this global drama, forming the vanguard of a new world order. We will explore the symbolic imagery of the woman clothed in purple and scarlet in Revelation chapter 17, a powerful symbol of a corrupted religious system that will align itself with these worldly powers. And we'll unravel the mystery of the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13, a chilling prophecy about a system of absolute control over every aspect of human life. Remember, friend, to keep your faith strong in God and Jesus Christ. The Bible shows us the way. Let's continue to uncover these secrets together. The 10 Kings of Daniel's vision, a complex tapestry woven from geopolitical realities and prophetic symbolism, demand closer scrutiny. While the specific identities remain debated among scholars, the 5 nations I mentioned, the United States, China, Russia, the European Union, and Israel, emerge as strong contenders for prominent roles. Consider their global influence, their economic power, and their strategic positions. The United States, with its military might and global reach, could represent a powerful force shaping this new world order. China, with its economic dominance and growing military strength, presents a counterbalance, a potential rival vying for global supremacy. Russia, a historical player in international affairs and possessor of significant nuclear weaponry, holds a pivotal position, capable of shifting the balance of power. The European Union, a formidable economic bloc, could act as a unifying force, or a fractured entity caught in the crosscurrents of global power struggles. And Israel, a nation deeply rooted in religious significance and strategically located at the heart of the Middle East, plays a pivotal role, its future inextricably linked to the unfolding drama. The interaction of these five entities, their alliances and rivalries, will determine the shape of the emerging world order. Will they unite under a single banner, or will they clash in a catastrophic conflict? The prophecies suggest a period of uneasy alliance, a temporary unity masking underlying tensions. This unity, however, will be built on a foundation of compromise, a willingness to sacrifice certain principles for the sake of perceived security. This is where the abomination of desolation truly takes shape, not as a single identifiable event, but as a system, a way of life, built upon a foundation of deception and compromise. Think of the implications for religious freedom. The woman clothed in purple and scarlet in Revelation chapter 17, often interpreted as a corrupt religious system, might represent a global religious entity, or a powerful coalition of religious institutions that compromise their faith for political expediency. This entity, seemingly benevolent and peace-loving, will subtly shift the focus from spiritual truth to worldly power, creating a seductive false religion that aligns seamlessly with the goals of the emerging world order. This isn't about outright persecution. It's about a gradual erosion of faith, a subtle shift in allegiance from God to the system. The allure of worldly security and prosperity will be too tempting for many to resist. The mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13, often misunderstood as a literal brand, is more likely a symbol of absolute control and dependence on the system. It represents a total integration of technology and governance, a seamless blending of digital surveillance with societal structures. This system will offer convenience, efficiency, and security, but at the cost of individual autonomy and spiritual freedom. It will be a tempting offer, presented as a solution to the world's problems, a pathway to peace and prosperity, a deceptive peace offering that ultimately enslaves both body and soul. The choice, as always, will be ours. Will we choose the illusion of security offered by the system, or will we cling to the enduring truth of faith in God and Jesus Christ? The Bible provides a clear warning, and we must heed it. The implications of this emerging world order extend far beyond religious freedom. Consider the economic landscape. The pursuit of global economic stability, often presented as a noble goal, could lead to a concentration of power in the hands of a few, creating a system of unprecedented wealth disparity. This isn't simply about capitalism versus socialism. It's about a carefully orchestrated system where the flow of wealth is controlled, directing resources towards those who align with the prevailing ideology. Think of the potential for technological monopolies, controlling not just information, but also essential resources like food and energy. This control, cloaked in the language of efficiency and sustainability, could become a powerful tool of coercion, rewarding compliance and punishing dissent. The environmental crisis, often cited as a unifying threat, could be manipulated to further consolidate power. The implementation of drastic environmental policies, while potentially necessary, could be used to justify unprecedented government intrusion into individual lives, restricting freedoms in the name of saving the planet. The narrative will be compelling: sacrifice individual liberty for the collective good. But who defines the collective good and who benefits from such sacrifices? The answer, in this scenario, lies with those controlling the system. Furthermore, the erosion of national sovereignty is a significant concern. The pursuit of global unity, often framed as a path to peace, could lead to the dismantling of individual nations' autonomy, replaced by a supranational authority wielding immense power. This authority, presented as a benevolent protector, could subtly erode national identities, cultures, and traditions, replacing them with a homogenized global culture that serves the interests of the ruling elite. The loss of national identity is a profound loss, one that impacts not only political structures, but also the very fabric of individual lives and communities. The potential for widespread surveillance is another chilling aspect of this emerging world order. Under the guise of security and crime prevention, advanced technologies could be deployed to monitor every aspect of human life, from online activity to physical movements. This constant surveillance, coupled with sophisticated AI-powered predictive policing, could create a climate of fear and self-censorship, stifling dissent and limiting freedom of expression. The illusion of security, therefore, comes at the cost of true freedom and individual autonomy. The line between convenience and control will blur, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between genuine security measures and tools of oppression. The ability to track every transaction, every communication, every movement presents a terrifying prospect, one that demands careful consideration and proactive resistance. The fight for privacy, therefore, is not simply a fight for individual rights, but a fight for the very soul of humanity. This erosion of individual liberty wouldn't be a sudden, violent upheaval, but a gradual, insidious process. Imagine a world where your carbon footprint dictates your social standing, your access to resources, even your ability to travel. A system of social credit scores, initially presented as an incentive for environmentally responsible behavior, could evolve into a powerful tool of social control. Those with low scores might find themselves relegated to the margins of society, denied access to essential services, housing, and opportunities. The pressure to conform, to adhere to the dictates of the system, would be immense. Consider the potential for manipulation of information. The very definition of sustainability could be subtly redefined to serve the interests of the powerful. What constitutes responsible consumption? Who decides? The narrative could shift seamlessly from environmental protection to economic control, with corporations and governments working in tandem to shape consumer behavior and stifle dissent. Independent media outlets, already struggling to survive in the current landscape, could be further marginalized or even silenced, leaving the public reliant on carefully curated information streams that reinforce the dominant narrative. The truth in this scenario becomes a commodity, controlled and distributed by those in power. The impact on global health is another crucial consideration. While advancements in medicine and technology continue, access to healthcare could become increasingly stratified. Those who can afford it will receive cutting-edge treatments, while others are left to fend for themselves within an overburdened and under-resourced system. This disparity, exacerbated by environmental degradation and resource scarcity, could lead to widespread social unrest and instability. The promise of a healthier planet could ironically mask a future where healthcare becomes a luxury, further dividing the world between the haves and the have-nots. Furthermore, the economic consequences could be devastating. The shift towards a centrally planned, resource-controlled economy could stifle innovation and economic growth. The free market, with all its imperfections, offers a degree of dynamism and adaptability that a centrally controlled system lacks. The suppression of competition and individual entrepreneurship could lead to stagnation and widespread economic hardship. The illusion of stability and security provided by a powerful central authority could mask a future of economic stagnation and widespread poverty. The price of this controlled stability could be a stifled human spirit, a lack of innovation, and a general decline in the quality of life for the majority. The potential for widespread economic inequality is a chilling prospect, one that demands careful consideration and proactive measures to prevent its realization. The fight for economic justice, therefore, is inextricably linked to the fight for individual liberty and environmental sustainability. We must strive for a future where these values coexist, not clash. The erosion of individual liberties under the guise of sustainability presents a particularly insidious threat. Imagine a world where carbon footprints are meticulously tracked, not just through voluntary initiatives, but through mandatory, government-mandated monitoring systems. Every purchase, every journey, every energy consumption is recorded, analyzed, and used to create a comprehensive profile of each citizen's sustainability score. This score then dictates access to resources, opportunities, and even social mobility. Those with a high score are the environmentally virtuous, enjoy privileges and advantages, while those with low scores face penalties and restrictions. This system, ostensibly designed to protect the planet, effectively creates a tiered society based on environmental compliance, subtly rewarding conformity and punishing dissent. The freedom to choose, a cornerstone of individual liberty, is replaced by a system of enforced compliance, where personal autonomy is sacrificed at the altar of collective responsibility. Consider the potential for misuse of such a system. What happens when the definition of environmental virtue is manipulated? What if certain industries or groups are unfairly penalized, while others are given preferential treatment? The potential for corruption and abuse is immense. Imagine a scenario where powerful corporations lobby for favorable regulations, ensuring their own practices are deemed sustainable, while smaller businesses, lacking the resources to navigate the complex regulatory landscape, are driven out of business. The playing field becomes uneven, tilting in favor of the wealthy and influential, further exacerbating existing inequalities. Furthermore, the constant surveillance and data collection inherent in such a system pose a significant threat to privacy. The intimate details of our lives, our consumption habits, our travel patterns, our energy usage, become readily available to the authorities. This information, potentially combined with other datasets, could be used for purposes far beyond environmental monitoring. The potential for misuse is chilling, with the possibility of targeted surveillance, social engineering, and even political repression. The line between environmental protection and state control becomes increasingly blurred, as the power to monitor and control individual behavior is wielded by a centralized authority. The promise of a sustainable future could easily morph into a dystopian nightmare, where individual freedoms are sacrificed in the name of a greater good that may never materialize. The erosion of trust in government, already a significant issue in many parts of the world, would undoubtedly be exacerbated by such a system, leading to widespread social unrest and instability. The very foundations of a free and democratic society would be threatened. This insidious system, cloaked in the guise of environmental stewardship, would inevitably lead to a chilling form of social stratification. Imagine a society where access to healthcare, education, and even basic necessities is determined by one's sustainability score. A family living in a less energy-efficient home, perhaps due to financial constraints, might find their children denied access to quality schooling, while a wealthy family capable of investing in state-of-the-art, sustainable technology enjoys privileged access to the best resources. This creates a vicious cycle of inequality, perpetuating and exacerbating existing societal divides. The promise of a level playing field is replaced by a rigidly hierarchical system, where environmental virtue becomes the sole determinant of one's social standing. The potential for manipulation extends beyond corporate influence. Consider the impact on marginalized communities. Communities already struggling with poverty, lack of access to resources, and systemic disadvantages would be disproportionately penalized under such a system. Their lower scores, often a reflection of their limited access to sustainable technologies and practices, would further limit their opportunities, trapping them in a cycle of deprivation. The system, designed to promote equality, would instead reinforce existing inequalities, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of environmental injustice. Furthermore, the very definition of environmental virtue becomes a battleground. What constitutes sustainable practices? Who decides? The answers to these questions are fraught with potential for bias and manipulation. Will the definition remain static, or will it constantly shift to suit the interests of the powerful? Imagine a scenario where the definition of sustainable agriculture changes, rendering small-scale farmers unable to compete with large-scale industrial operations. Or perhaps new regulations favor certain energy sources, crippling others and leaving entire communities economically devastated. The constant flux and ambiguity surrounding the definition of environmental virtue creates an environment of uncertainty, fear, and instability. The technological infrastructure required to support such a system would be immense, requiring widespread surveillance and data collection. Every aspect of our lives, from our energy consumption to our food choices, would be meticulously tracked and analyzed. The potential for data breaches and misuse is staggering. Imagine the consequences of this data falling into the wrong hands. Hackers, foreign governments, or even rogue elements within the system itself. The potential for blackmail, manipulation, and social engineering is frightening. The very act of living becomes a constant negotiation with the state, a performance aimed at maintaining a high sustainability score, a score that dictates every aspect of one's existence. The price of privacy, it seems, is the freedom to live without constant fear of scrutiny and judgment. This system, ostensibly designed to foster environmental responsibility, ironically incentivizes a form of ecological theater. Individuals, driven by the need to maintain high scores, might engage in superficial acts of sustainability, prioritizing appearances over genuine commitment. Imagine a society where meticulously curated social media posts showcasing eco-friendly lifestyles become more valuable than actual impactful change. The pressure to project an image of environmental virtue could lead to a proliferation of greenwashing, where individuals and corporations engage in deceptive marketing to enhance their scores without making substantive improvements. This would not only undermine the integrity of the system but also divert resources away from truly effective environmental initiatives. Consider the impact on innovation. A society rigidly ranked by its environmental footprint might stifle creativity and risk-taking. Individuals might be hesitant to pursue unconventional or potentially disruptive technologies, fearing that even well-intentioned experiments could negatively impact their scores. This could lead to a stagnation of technological advancement, hindering the development of truly sustainable solutions. The fear of failure, amplified by the high stakes of the social credit system, could stifle innovation and limit the exploration of alternative approaches to environmental challenges. The economic consequences are equally concerning. The constant fluctuation of environmental regulations, driven by the ever-shifting definition of environmental virtue, would create an environment of extreme economic instability. Businesses would struggle to plan for the long term, constantly adapting to new rules and guidelines. This uncertainty would discourage investment, hinder economic growth, and exacerbate existing inequalities. Small businesses and entrepreneurs, already struggling to compete with larger corporations, would be particularly vulnerable. This system, designed to promote equitable outcomes, could instead lead to economic collapse and widespread unemployment. Moreover, the reliance on technology to monitor and regulate every aspect of our lives raises serious questions about autonomy and individual liberty. The constant surveillance, the data collection, and the potential for misuse create a chilling atmosphere of fear and mistrust. The erosion of privacy would be profound, leaving individuals vulnerable to manipulation and control. The very foundations of a free and democratic society would be undermined by a system that prioritizes environmental control over individual freedoms. The potential for abuse of power is immense, with the potential for the system to be used to target political opponents, suppress dissent, and maintain the power of the ruling elite. The promise of a sustainable future could be tragically overshadowed by the sacrifice of fundamental human rights. The cost of this seemingly utopian vision might be far too high, a price measured not just in economic terms, but in the loss of our freedoms and our humanity. The insidious creep of this environmental social credit system extends beyond the economic and personal spheres. Consider its impact on international relations. Nations, already grappling with complex geopolitical issues, would now be forced to navigate a new landscape of environmental competition and score-based diplomacy. Trade agreements could be contingent on achieving specific environmental benchmarks, leading to protectionist measures and trade wars. Developing nations, often lacking the resources and infrastructure to meet stringent environmental standards, would be disproportionately disadvantaged, further exacerbating global inequalities. The potential for conflict and instability is immense, as nations vie for a higher ranking on the global environmental leaderboard. Imagine the ramifications: a global arms race, not for weapons but for technological solutions to improve environmental scores, diverting precious resources from pressing social issues like poverty and healthcare. Furthermore, the very definition of environmental virtue is inherently subjective and prone to manipulation. What constitutes an environmentally responsible action today might be deemed inadequate tomorrow, creating a constant state of flux and uncertainty. The criteria used to calculate environmental scores could be easily manipulated to serve the interests of the powerful, leaving marginalized communities and vulnerable populations further disadvantaged. Imagine a scenario where certain industries or practices are deemed environmentally virtuous, not because of their actual impact, but because they benefit powerful corporations or political entities. This would create a system riddled with corruption and injustice, undermining its stated goals of fairness and sustainability. The potential for unintended consequences is staggering. For example, a focus solely on reducing carbon emissions might lead to an over-reliance on certain technologies, neglecting the broader ecological impact. The mass adoption of electric vehicles, for instance, could strain the resources needed for battery production and disposal, creating new environmental problems. The system's narrow focus on quantifiable metrics could blind us to the complex interdependencies within ecosystems, leading to unforeseen and potentially catastrophic consequences. We risk optimizing for a single, easily measurable metric while sacrificing the overall health and resilience of the planet. The lack of transparency and accountability inherent in such a system is also deeply troubling. The algorithms used to calculate environmental scores would likely be opaque and proprietary, making it difficult to understand how decisions are made or to challenge their fairness. This lack of transparency would erode public trust, leading to widespread cynicism and resentment. The potential for biased data collection and manipulation is significant, leaving individuals with little recourse if their scores are unfairly lowered. The resulting loss of faith in institutions could have far-reaching and destabilizing consequences for society as a whole. The dream of a perfectly managed environment could easily morph into an Orwellian nightmare of constant surveillance and control, where individual liberties are sacrificed at the altar of environmental perfection. Ultimately, the pursuit of a numerically defined environmental virtue risks becoming a self-defeating exercise. The inherent complexity of ecological systems defies simplistic quantification. Reducing the intricate web of life to a single score ignores the crucial nuances of biodiversity, ecosystem resilience, and the intricate relationships between species. Focusing solely on easily measurable metrics like carbon emissions neglects the far-reaching impact of habitat destruction, pollution of water sources, and the depletion of natural resources. A high environmental score, therefore, might mask profound ecological damage, offering a false sense of security and hindering genuine progress towards sustainability. Consider the potential for greenwashing, the practice of making misleading or unsubstantiated claims about the environmental benefits of a product, service, or company. In a system reliant on numerical scores, greenwashing becomes exponentially easier. Companies could strategically manipulate their operations to improve their scores without genuinely addressing underlying environmental problems. This could involve investing heavily in superficial improvements while neglecting fundamental changes needed for long-term sustainability. The result would be a system that rewards superficial compliance over genuine commitment, further undermining the very principles it seeks to uphold. Moreover, the economic implications of such a system are far-reaching and potentially devastating. The pressure to achieve high environmental scores could disproportionately impact smaller businesses in developing nations who lack the resources to invest in expensive technologies or implement complex environmental management systems. This could lead to economic inequality and further marginalize already vulnerable populations. The pursuit of environmental perfection, therefore, could inadvertently exacerbate existing social and economic disparities, creating a system that is both environmentally unsustainable and socially unjust. The focus on individual scores also risks overlooking the crucial role of systemic change. While individual actions are important, they are insufficient to address the root causes of environmental degradation. The system needs fundamental reform, including changes to industrial practices, consumption patterns, and political policies. A system focused solely on individual scores might deflect attention from the need for systemic change, allowing powerful corporations and governments to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. The emphasis on individual responsibility could become a convenient distraction from the larger structural issues that need to be addressed. The potential for social unrest is also a serious concern. A system that assigns environmental scores to individuals could lead to social stratification based on environmental virtue. Those with higher scores might enjoy privileges and advantages, while those with lower scores could face discrimination and penalties. This could create a society deeply divided along environmental lines, leading to social unrest and conflict. The utopian vision of an environmentally responsible society could easily devolve into a dystopian reality, marked by social inequality and environmental injustice. This inherent flaw in prioritizing individual scores highlights the limitations of a purely quantitative approach to environmental responsibility. A nuanced understanding of environmental impact requires qualitative assessment, considering the context and complexity of various actions. For instance, a small family-owned farm practicing sustainable methods might score lower than a large corporation employing sophisticated carbon offsetting schemes, despite the farm's significantly smaller overall impact. Such a system fails to account for the qualitative differences in their environmental stewardship. The algorithm, blind to the nuances of ethical farming versus corporate greenwashing, inadvertently rewards the latter. Furthermore, the transparency and accountability of such a scoring system are questionable. The methods used to calculate these scores need to be open and auditable, ensuring that they are not manipulated or gamed by powerful interests. Without robust transparency, the system becomes susceptible to bias and corruption, undermining its credibility and efficacy. The potential for data manipulation, particularly by large corporations with access to sophisticated data analytics, is significant. They could strategically influence the data inputs to inflate their scores, further obscuring their true environmental impact. This potential for manipulation casts a long shadow over the entire system's integrity. The very definition of environmental responsibility also presents a challenge. What constitutes environmentally responsible behavior is often a matter of debate and varies considerably depending on cultural contexts, technological advancements, and evolving scientific understanding. A system attempting to quantify this subjective concept inevitably faces the problem of setting arbitrary thresholds and criteria, which risks overlooking crucial aspects of environmental sustainability. For example, the emphasis on carbon emissions might overshadow other equally important environmental concerns, such as biodiversity loss or water pollution. The system's narrow focus could lead to a skewed prioritization of environmental issues, neglecting the interconnectedness of ecological systems. The unintended consequences of such a system extend beyond individual and corporate actions. It could also influence policy decisions, potentially leading to the prioritization of easily quantifiable environmental metrics over more complex and nuanced challenges. Policymakers, under pressure to achieve high environmental scores, might focus on superficial improvements rather than addressing the underlying systemic issues. This could lead to a misallocation of resources and a failure to tackle the most pressing environmental challenges effectively. The pursuit of a high score could become an end in itself, diverting attention and resources away from genuinely impactful solutions. In conclusion, while the intention behind creating a quantifiable system for measuring environmental responsibility is laudable, the inherent complexities and potential for manipulation renders such a simplistic approach deeply flawed. The lack of nuance, transparency, and the risk of prioritizing easily measurable metrics over holistic sustainability ultimately undermine its effectiveness and could even exacerbate existing environmental problems. A more robust and nuanced approach, incorporating qualitative assessments alongside quantitative data and prioritizing genuine systemic change over superficial improvements, is urgently needed.